are live.
Okay, great. Let's see here. Let me grab the agenda. Welcome, everyone. This is Consensus Layer Call 131. I'll drop the agenda in the chat here. Maybe, let's see. Let me just close OBS. Let me see. Are we still good with the stream? Okay, I got a yes. Cool. Then, okay, let's get started. Yeah, hey everyone. So this is the call 131. And yeah, I imagine we'll have a pretty packed agenda today, so let's get to it. First, let's talk about Deneb. There are a few things that we should bring up. The first one,
Aš
this
manau,
one.
kad reiktų tada judėti.
Hey, Stelios, can you? There we go. Okay, great. Let's see here. Yeah, first thing is clarify voluntary exits topic. Sorry, gossip topic after Capella. Does someone want to take this over? I think I know at a high level what's going on.
I have opened this topic. I want just to be sure that all clients understand it on the same way, that we should use the new topic for this, and maybe change a bit wording in this line.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think the sort of confusion here is that we're using this old domain for verifying the signatures, but the gossip topic, I believe, should be for Deneb. Does that align with everyone's understanding? We have a thumbs up, 2 thumbs up, 3 thumbs up. Okay, so I assume everyone's doing this and we understand. And then, yeah, from there, if we can clarify the language of the PR, that works. So we're good on this. I'll assume silence is a yes. Okay. Next up, we have a comment here from Terrence. So I'm sure you're all aware, but there was a bit of a network outage, likely due to some interactions between the consensus clients and blocks routes, the relay. Terrence, do you want to give us an overview of what exactly happened?
Sure, happy to. So, yeah, so people can read my comments. I don't want to repeat. So, since then, Block Trust put their postmortem. Michael also has their response. And the gist of the issue is that there's definitely some, I would say, edge case with how Beacon API is interpreted and used. So currently, Beacon API proposed block endpoint has this option to basically say the following: if I see the similar block, it's already gossip on the network, I will not propagate the blocks. By propagate, I mean I will not even send the block out as the first hop. So this is to prevent unbundling attack. So basically all the clients do that, do basically implement that. But the open question is that what do we do with the blob sidecar? Because blob sidecar doesn't have this inherent slashing condition. So currently, I think before that, Lighthouse and Prism, I can say for them, they do not broadcast the blob sidecar if they see there's a similar block on the Gaussian network. But because of that, blob sidecar was not able to be Gaussian. So since then, we have updated the behavior to basically fix that. So Michael is also working with the rest of the client team to make sure their Beacon API is basically kind of working for the rest of the relay as well. So yeah, that's pretty much the update.
Cool, thanks. And yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone hears from BlocksRoute to kind of respond, but yeah, ultimately, I mean, ideally this wouldn't happen. We have like lot of testing in place to make sure things like this don't happen, but this one kind of slipped through the cracks. So yeah, I guess from here we'll just work with them to try to prevent things like this in the future. Okay, is there anything else for Deneb that anyone wants to talk about? Any data, any stats on blobs, anything like that? Okay, Deneb's good then. Next up, I want to talk about Electra. So I imagine this will take up the bulk of the call. So just to like frame things, it'd be great to go ahead and move forward on figuring out what Electra looks like, even just like an initial scope, especially so that we can aim for DevNets as soon as possible. Even ideally within like say the next month, we have things ready to go. Barnabas asked about 2537. So I was only including things for the CL, and there really aren't any CL dependencies for 2537. Does that answer the question, Barnabas? Okay, we got a thumbs up. Right. So I started with the 4 that have been included, just going off of this EIP 7600 for the hard fork meta. And yeah, I think it'd be helpful just to go through each one of these in turn, go through the status of the spec. If there's any open questions we can talk about now, that'd be great. But ultimately, let's try to figure out what we need to do to get these to a place where we can implement DevNets, again, say in the next month, really as quickly as possible. So the first one is 6110. This is essentially making deposits work a lot like withdrawals today, where they are sort of synchronously produced. If you deposit within a block, the deposit's then passed off to the CL, who then processes that on the beacon chain. Are there anything here? I mean, I looked yesterday, it seemed actually like it was in a pretty good shape. Is there anything anyone wants to talk about? Any open questions on this one? Or do we feel pretty good about it? Yeah, Mikhail?
Yeah, so it has this AP has a consensus spec test with a good coverage, and there is the PR to the spec which bundles 6110 and 7002, which is in progress. So yeah, that's also great. About 6110, I was just going to raise a bit of awareness that considering the max effective balance is in Electra as well, and considering that the max effective balance introduces the pending deposits queue, there was just a thought that we could leverage on having this queue to finalize the deposit flow before actually creating new validators. It is helpful for preserving the invariant of the pop key index matching. And if this can be resolved on the spec level, on the protocol level, we could probably get rid of additional complexity in CL client implementations where they would need to manage this cache per each fork independently. So because the same pop key can get different indexes across different forks. This is just one of the things that probably could be introduced. I'm going to play with it in next couple of weeks and provide the update. If it's worth doing or not, we will decide later on.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. If you want to open an issue or even make a PR to explore that, sounds good. Okay, anything else on that? Otherwise, we'll move to 7002. Okay, let's go to 7002 then. So this is the execution layer initiated exits. And we'll get to this with MaxEB, but we also want to include, I suppose we're calling them partial withdrawals. Does someone here want to give an update on 7002? Again, I think the spec is in a pretty good place, except for the partial withdrawals bit. So it looks like the EIP would need to be updated, and then also the pre-deploy assembly. Like Clan or Mikhail, I think you guys have been working on this.
Yeah,
Right,
like,
okay.
do you want to? Or do you want me to share the last update?
Yeah, I think you've been working on adding partial withdrawals, so maybe you can share how that's going.
Yeah, sure. So there is a PR into the assembly, into actually the repository, where the assembly code for the contract is sitting. So I've just sent the PR to the chat. Yeah, in this PR, basically what we have is adding the amount field. The change is relatively small because the amount field is appended to the pub key data and stored in the storage slot where the rest of the pub key bytes can accommodate the amount as well. Yeah, so it's relatively small PR to the code, and once we finish working on it, I think it just needs review and merge, and then merge after that review. Yeah, we will, we'll update the EIP. That's it basically. And yeah, also the corresponding change would need to be done to the engine API as well. But it's going to be relatively small as well.
Right, and for the engine API, it's just changing execution payload, right? There's no like additional fields that we need.
Yeah, it's changing the. We already have the spec for Electra, a bootstrap with 6110 and 7002. I mean, engine API spec. So we just need to add an amount field to the exit data structure, and basically rename exit to withdraw request to generalize this thing. Yeah, but that's just a renaming thing.
Cool. Okay, sounds good. Okay, if there's nothing else on that one, we'll move to MaxEB 7251. I think Mark is on the call somewhere.
Yep. Can you guys hear me?
Cool.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah, so we've been chugging away at MaxEB for a while now. In terms of the spec, it's been merged into dev. Most of the pieces are in place, obviously still minor changes and things being updated, and that will continue for a while. And then there are a few outstanding questions that we still need to answer before we can really stabilize it. So first of all, when a validator opts into being a compounding validator, they are then exempt from the withdrawal sweep until they hit the MaxEB of 2048. And a feature that we could include are custom ceilings, where validators could configure a custom ceiling up to 2048, but potentially lower if they want to still hit the withdrawal sweep. And I mean, obviously it's a little more to implement, but it depends on what the appetite is for that from the community. We did speak with Lido yesterday, and they said it was nice to have, and it's certainly nice to have for solar stakers, but it's not something that at least Lido, I guess, it's not mission critical for them. So that's something to discuss. And then the second bigger one is regarding consolidations of validators. So in the third breakout call, we were kind of leaning towards, there's basically two options for this. One is a beacon chain operation similar to BLS to execution changes. And another is to have it be execution layer initiated similarly to the new deposits and the exits or the partial withdrawals. And so in the third call, we were kind of leaning towards having it being a beacon chain operation because it was lower complexity. And we kind of made the assumption that all validators that shared the same withdrawal credentials are fungible with each other. But then in the last call yesterday, we had someone from Lido come in and they said that this kind of breaks their accounting, both on and off chain, and that it would be ideal for them if the withdrawal address had some ability to either initiate or gatekeep consolidating a validator, because there's a risk that they wouldn't be able to update their contracts in time for the fork. So this kind of puts execution layer initiated consolidations more or less back on the table. And we kind of need input from the wider community to see if this is something they have an appetite for. So like I said, Lido seems to have an appetite or is worried about that they won't have time before the fork. And I know I don't believe it breaks anything with Rocket Pool, but I do know that they like the feature. Just it gives more. It's just more of a beneficial thing rather than something that would break their contracts. But yeah, basically those two issues that we need wider input on.
Gotcha, thanks. Yeah, I agreed with PoTUS here in the chat, just like surfacing on your first point, like partial withdrawals, like with 7002 seem to get at the same thing. I guess the trade-off then is, yeah, maybe there's more transactions you have to send. But yeah, I think whatever we can do to reduce complexity is at least should be very strongly weighed. Yeah. And then the other point, yeah, I guess we'd want to add execution layer consolidation initiated. Well, execution layer initiated consolidations. So yeah, I mean, again, I would just say, let's be mindful of scope creep. If we can get away without it, then that's strongly preferable. Do we feel like we have a way forward to answer these two things?
The alternative that Lido was asking for was like I guess execution layer gated consolidation, so it like might still be uninitiated, but I don't know, that kind of seems like not, it just seems like worse UX and not significantly less complexity. But yeah.
Right, okay. I mean, I think a path forward is we can agree to do like initial Pectra devnets without these things and just work on them in parallel. And then, you know, they're not going to radically change. Well, I don't know. If it ripples into 7002, then that's could become kind of big. But either way, I would at least suggest that as an option just to move ahead and then, you know, work on these things in parallel.
Yeah.
Is this the thing where we need another breakout call?
Probably.
Or okay.
I mean,
okay.
yeah, I'm sure we could have another one next week and talk about it more.
Yeah, and it sounds like we probably want one that, you know, if it's in 2 weeks, then we have time to like get more community members to be present, because it sounds like that might be the path forward, is just seeing how much demand there really is, and then using that to weigh our decision.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. Especially if it takes 2 weeks and we have a little more time rather than, I guess, just the next call next week.
Right. I mean, you know, if it can happen next week, that's great, but it's more just like giving people time to be aware and then plan and show up.
Yeah, I think it's just about scoping out the complexity of execution layer initiated consolidations. I just anticipate it might take a little more than a week, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks. Okay, MaxEB. We can move on to the next EIP that's been included, 7549. So this is moving the committee index out of the attestation data into the attestation object. again, I took a look at the specs yesterday. They seem like they're in a pretty good place. Are there any open questions anyone here who's been working on this are aware of? I think Mikhail might have some stuff.
Yeah, so this, yeah, just for the context, this EIP also introduces a notion of on-chain aggregates versus network aggregates. So it allows to back signatures and aggregation bits more tightly when we include attestation on chain. And currently, this design that is in the spec has one downside. Because those aggregates will be bigger, because there are aggregation bits from many committees in one on-chain aggregate. So we have to reduce the number of max attestations, and currently it is set to 8 versus 128 as we have it right now. And the problem here is that let's just consider that the situation where a proposer wants to include many aggregates from the same committee in the same slot, which is the case according to the chain data we have, because those aggregates probably have have just more information and just more bits if we include like several of them for the same committee. And the problem here is that say we have 10 aggregates for the same committee, and one slot cannot accommodate it with this proposal, while with the status quo it can be accommodated. Why it can't accommodate? Because we have just 8 attestations at max, and each of those attestations can accommodate just one aggregate from the same committee. So what what I'm just going to play with is to see if we can replace the committee bit vector with the list of committee indexes. And in this case, they will be possible to include to pack aggregates from multiple aggregates from the same committee into one on-chain aggregate. And basically it means that one on-chain aggregate will be able to contain overlapping aggregates from the same committee. So that's just one addition that I want to try to experiment with.
Okay, and maybe just to recap, so we lowered the number of on-chain attestations per block because they're now more dense, right? But now this makes it harder to get even more aggregates in the same block, which makes sense.
Yeah, and in some cases, we probably want more flexibility.
Gotcha. Yeah, Terrence.
In this model, are you assuming there's this like aggregator that just volunteer the site to subscribe to all the subnets and then like aggregate the altruism basically on its behalf, versus like the current model is more like a random selection, right? You basically say today there's like 2048 committee, and each committee has like 500 validators, and by chances there are 16 validators. 16 aggregators per committee. So basically those are by random selection. So I guess which model does this? Okay. Proto just answered the proposal does this. I see. Thank you.
Right, yeah. So the way it's written right now is there's like that's sort of an additional step from what we do today, where as far as I can tell, the network level stuff stays in place, but then the proposer now can do this additional thing where they can like pack things much more tightly on chain, because now the attestation can like span, rather than just like one committee, they can now span all of them.
Right, but this doesn't reduce the beacon attestation aggregate subnets bandwidth and traffic, right? Which is what I thought it does, but I am wrong there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would make blocks smaller because again, the attestations are just more tightly packed, which is nice. It would be like a much more invasive change as far as I can tell, to like yeah, touch the network. I mean, theoretically we could do it, but yeah, it would be a much bigger change. Yeah, PeerDAS?
Yeah, so just on that, it does help in a few things. The economics of validators that are losing attestations because they can't fit after a reorg, and clients are dropping attestations because it's not just profitable for them to pack them. I think this is going to help on that. But yeah, Terence is it also helps in security. We have some security assumptions in that in the worst possible attacks to for choice, we should be able to repack attestations from other blocks into the canonical chain. So it even helps in the theoretical properties that for choice has. But I think Terence is getting into something that we should be prioritizing, which is what Julio from Aragon tried to come up with solutions, which is change the attestation format so that we actually lower the bandwidth on the network. I think this should be a priority for the next forks.
Yeah, I tend to agree, but then I think that would touch subnet structure, right? And so that's just like a much bigger thing. Poto says it's scary in the chat. Cool. So it sounds like Mikhail's going to look at getting more flexibility into like the on-chain packing. Otherwise, this one seems like it's in a pretty good place. Okay. Again, silence is compliance. Great. So those are the 4 EIPs on the CL that have been included in Electra. Yeah, next on the agenda, I did want to touch on updates with respect to each team's implementation status. Like again, well, again, maybe taking a step back, like I guess my plan now is to get all of these 4 at least into some like Electra spec in the CL specs. And have that out ASAP. Obviously, then we'll like work on spec tests, and hopefully, ideally, even by the end of the month, we have all that ready to go. So in parallel, it'd be great if client teams are implementing these things. Could I get a brief status update from each of the client teams on their implementation progress? Are there some of these that you've looked at, some of these that you haven't? Anything like that?
I can go for Lighthouse. Yeah, I would say we've got a lot of progress on MaxEB. Mark's been working on that, obviously. 6110, we've had an external contributor implement this. I think what's lacking still is any changes related to like the pub key cache. And Michal mentioned that he might be working on a design that would alleviate us having to make changes around this. So that would actually simplify that a lot. EIP 7002, I don't think we have any implementation progress on. And is that it, or am I missing? Oh yeah, the attestation change.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, Aton from our team has also started work on that one.
Cool. Thanks. Any other clients want to chime in?
Yeah, for TechCo, we have implemented 6110. But so we also implemented the cache, but we may have to revert that depending if the specs, which Mikhail discussed, are going to be part of it. 7002 is in progress. We have a PR for it. And the attestation changes are also being looked at. MaxEB, we haven't done any coding, but we have someone looking at it.
Great.
For Lodestar 6110, we have implemented, and we have mostly implemented MaxEB as well, and we might just push in other PRs that are required. So yeah, we are sort of feeling confident on it.
For Prism, we're POCing 7251 MaxEB, but the other ones we're still in the early phases of assigning to each of the team members. They're being discussed, but not too deep into it.
Sounds good. And I think Nimbus, we're still missing if anyone is here. Okay, I can follow up offline with Nimbus on that. So yeah, kind of what I expected. Some teams have different progress on different ones. And yeah, hopefully that can be top of mind for everyone over the next month. So yeah, Terrence.
Are there like a general tracking sheet for like team progress? You can think of like a table where the rows are the EIPs and the columns are client teams, and we can mark like progress, like basically milestone 1, milestone 2, blah blah. Oh,
Yeah,
it
we've
looks
done it
like
in the
Barnabas
past. It looks
posted
like,
it.
yeah, Barnabas is already on top of it. Great. Cool. Yeah, I think that will help people understand where their clients are at. And then again, I think it'd be great to aim for DevNet in like the next month and a half. And, you know, if client teams can do sort of pairwise interop, sort of on their own when they're ready, that'd be great. Okay, so those are the EIPs that have been included. Let's take some time to talk about other EIPs we might want to think about for the initial Pectra DevNet. One that was CFI but not included is inclusion list. I would at least like to get to a point today where we agree on ILs. Well, yeah. Should we focus on them or not? Does anyone have any thoughts here? I'm not sure exactly what the latest status is. I know there's some complication, let's say, around AA, account abstraction with the design.
Yeah, I can give a kind of brief update. Right, so I guess the last all core dev execution call has has a similar update, but so yeah, if you want kind of more details, check there. I think POTUS's post is the most thorough description of the relationship between 3074 specifically and inclusion list. I just sent the link in the chat. So yeah, I guess this issue came up and it's around kind of this idea that we used to have this assumption that if the transaction was valid in the pre-state of the block, it would be valid in the post-state of the block, unless the only condition that would change that is if there was a transaction from that address in the block. 3074 changes this because you can spend the balance of a different account. So an account that shows up in the inclusion list could be corresponding to an invalid transaction if someone else spends the balance from that account. So that's the TLDR and why 3074 in particular causes issues. We have a breakout room tomorrow. I'll share the link. It's PM issue 1000. Yeah, we hopefully will cover that kind of exhaustively there. Yeah, I think the general sentiment, at least in the IL channel of the ETH RMD Discord, has been that we have a few solutions, but most people are uncomfortable with both the speed at which the spec has changed, given these solutions, and the kind of aesthetics of the changes being I feel like they kind of look a little less aesthetic than the original design. I think it's still going to be something we have to face down the line. I don't think the 3074 compatibility will ever go away personally, but yeah, we can probably get more into the details tomorrow. I'll probably cut it here. And yeah, definitely a bunch of other people have a lot of context too if they want to chime in.
Cool, thanks. Okay, so what I would like to do today is just focus us on DevNet 0, which, you know, given ILs, they're maybe a little up in the air. They'd also, you know, like we won't make a decision today because we're also going to need EL buy-in, and like 3074 is not even CFI'd. So if that's an issue for ILs, but then it's on the fork, like, you know, maybe that unblocks ILs. Like it seems like there's some uncertainty there. And so I would kind of suggest just putting it to the side for now. Again, for like our initial DevNet 0 scope, I think everyone else will be plenty busy with these other 4 EIPs. And yeah, we can work on ILs in parallel. Was 3074 CFI'd? Yeah, I thought it wasn't. I think it's going to be discussed next ACDE.
It was CFI for CFI.
Great. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely some open questions here with respect to AA, and yeah, I don't think we're going to decide today. What I would then suggest is, yeah, essentially what I said. So basically, let's focus on these other 4. Again, I think that'll keep client teams busy, and yeah, ILs can just kind of go in parallel. And yeah, we'll see how they shape up. Let's see. Yeah, so Tim put the included EIPs in the chat. So it's the 4 that we've talked about today, and then also 2537, which I wasn't going to touch just because I believe that's only EL scope. And so, yeah, none of us really need to worry about it. So cool. Let's then, you know, it'd be good to hear what people think about timelines for, again, this initial DevNet. So, you know, assuming we only target these 4 EIPs, do people have thoughts on, you know, when we could start seeing early DevNets? Like, is this something that's going to take 1 month, 2 months? It's too early to give estimates. Anyone have any thoughts?
I feel like we don't really have enough info for estimates yet. If 6110 and MaxEB could both have design changes, that could change the workload a decent amount. So yeah, I think we just need to focus on like getting a DevNet spec. Because like rushing to the DevNet prior to having a spec is, I think, a bit counterproductive. It ends up with us like writing a lot of code that we can't end up merging.
Yeah, totally. Okay, well, I think that's at least my and Xiaowei's top priority over like the next week or 2 is like getting to some Electra spec that's final, and then hopefully that gives us more clarity moving forward. Okay, I think that's all I had for Electra. Is there anything else that we should discuss? I think it sounds like there's plenty to do and people know what to do. But if there's anything else, let's hear it.
Oh, well, we didn't mention PeerDAS, right?
Yeah, I was gonna go to that next, which
Okay.
we can jump into. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a transition.
Sorry, what was that?
Nothing. I just gave you. I prompted you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I put it more in like the research/spec side of things. Yeah, so PeerDAS hopefully is also top of mind for everyone. You know, at a high level, we should focus on what we can hopefully call a small fork. And then I think in parallel, you know, if your team's working on this, you know, say 80% is going to Electra, maybe 20% is going to PeerDAS. And yeah, that's something that we can move forward in parallel as well. Are there, let's see. Yeah, anyone here want to give an update? I know there's been some like proof of concept work on implementation. Also, the spec is, well, there's a huge PR around the PeerDAS spec. I think the plan is to merge that as is, and then, you know, any open issues from that PR, we'll just move to another issue and kind of iterate from there. Is there, yeah, anything on PeerDAS people want to discuss?
I guess I can give like a general update with Lighthouse stuff. We've made like a lot of progress. Right now we're spending a fair bit of time though refactoring existing Lighthouse code to sort of like support integrating PeerDAS more simply. So I think we're still a decent amount away from a full Lighthouse implementation. But we have like a lot of progress on individual pieces.
Okay, awesome. Are any other client teams actively looking at PeerDAS? Yeah, PoTUS?
Yeah, so I can't really speak for Prism because I don't know if Nishant is here. Nishant and Manu from Prism are looking at this, and they have been looking at the specification, started thinking, I mean, brainstorming for the actual coding. But something that they pointed, that Nishant pointed, is that even though technically it's not a hard fork, it's in practice it is, because it seems to be very hard to have these networking changes not affecting brutally the network if you don't ship them at a hard fork. So I wonder if this has been agreed or not, because if this is going to be in a hard fork, then this decision has to be made right now.
Right. So, I mean, I think the thinking was kind of that, assuming it's not like, yeah, like you're saying, really complex networking wise, like clients, you know, you can imagine that I download Prism and I set a flag in terms of my like availability mode. And that should just sort of be transparent. At least that's the intention with PeerDAS. The only like necessary hard fork would be in bumping up the blob data gas limit, right?
I understand that technically that's correct, but the problem seems to be along the lines of like proposers not proposers are updated and they don't send the full blobs, or like PeerDAS nodes don't download the blob, so they don't have the blob to serve it completely, and then non-PeerDAS blobs wouldn't be able to get the blob, and this can create like head split views.
Right. So what I would say to that is just like, I think we keep working on, you know, implementations on the side. I think it'll become clear, you know, if we have PeerDAS DevNets, say 6 months from now, 8 months from now, then like, it'll be clear if this is an issue or not, and then we can go from there. Yeah, I would rather focus on shipping Electra as quickly as possible. And so like, I don't want to have this huge uncertainty of PeerDAS slow things down personally. I don't know if anyone else disagrees.
So we had sort of talked a little bit about potentially having overlap in like serving both like PeerDAS samples and participating in blob gossip and blob validation normally. So then we could get like even on mainnet some degree of like certainty with sampling that like when you sample the blobs are there, but there'd be like a lot of redundant upload download that we'd have for a period. So unclear if it's worth it, but I thought.
Yeah, but it does like greatly de-risk relying on PeerDAS, which I think is important. So I don't like that would be my preference, is to like de-risk as much as possible, have a more gradual rollout, and then once we're very confident, then go ahead and do like the hard fork to bump up the blob count. Okay, well, there's some chat, I guess that's worth surfacing. Ansgar saying, you know, PeerDAS is definitely very, very urgent. And then, yeah, to PoTUS's point next in the chat, that would change prioritizations. Yeah, Ansgar, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's not like unanimous agreement here yet necessarily that there is the demand on the layer 2 side yet to already absorb the blob throughput that we have today, and that basically it's going to be very urgent to scale. I personally predict that will happen. Of course, we will see by the time we basically have to make final decisions around Electra. We will have more time to see how much the demand has picked up. But ideally, at least I'm operating on the assumption that it will pick up. I would personally like to see at least this be prioritized in the sense that clients spend attention and resources on this. And then if it's not ready in time for Electra, I don't think Electra should wait for it because it's not necessarily strictly like it has to be combined with the fork. But I would personally think it would be very unfortunate if basically everyone focuses on the Electra features and only once that's done basically starts really working a lot on PeerDAS. That seems like the wrong order of priorities to me.
Right. And this is kind of my point a second ago, where I think, if client teams can split focus 80-20, let's say, I think that is a good compromise.
I also have brought up something to a few people, but is it possible in Electra we could consider increasing the max blob size to something like 10 or so? And then when we are closer to the Electra fork, we'll have more of an idea of how much demand there is. And then potentially, for like while F star is going on, maybe there's a CL only fork and we can decide at that time whether or not maybe we just further increase max blobs per block to something like 14 or 16, or if PeerDAS has made sufficient progress, then maybe we could handle the CL only fork that does PeerDAS, but we could make that decision later. Like right now we could plan for a small increase in capacity for Electra and then later decide on what the next increase in capacity is.
Right. And Ansgar, you had an EIP, right, to suggest bumping up the blob counts even without PeerDAS?
Yes, it's still in draft, but it has a number, 7,500. Basically, the idea would be to have it gradually increased. At Electra, basically like a small bump at Electra itself, and then 2 months later, like another bump, and then 2 months later, another bump. Exact details, like in this case, I was targeting 816 basically. It could, of course, be less ambitious initially, but something like that. The one complicating factor here is just that basically we have two alternative approaches for scaling, right? So basically, there's still headroom for like a one-time pushing the existing 4 mechanism to its limits, right? So basically just really optimizing blob propagation, seeing how well the network handles things today, and then pushing to this. Of course, this will require some engineering effort. And so, of course, once we move to PeerDAS or other forms of data availability sampling, this will basically no longer, like this will become redundant work. So the question is, if we are optimistic on the timeline for DAS, it would basically be a waste to put engineering efforts on pushing to the limits of 4. But if we think that, say, DAS, PeerDAS will still need a year or so to hit mainnet, it would maybe make sense to first have like one initial step of throughput increases just via pushing 4, and then a second step moving to DAS. So I feel like we just have to agree on a strategy.
Right. I mean, that makes sense. And then the question is like, how do you actually get there? It seems a bit early to like commit one way or the other. So, I think we see how mainnet goes, right? Just getting live data is going to inform how urgent it is to bump up the 4 blob count. If PeerDAS implementation proceeds a lot more quickly than we expect, then that kind of pushes us that way. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's just something to keep on everyone's radar, and then we'll adjust as we go.
I mean, I think, is it true though that either way the pressure for Electra is a small 4 blob increase?
Well, it sounds like, I mean, yeah, so I think it'll just depend on PeerDAS implementation, right? Like if PeerDAS is ready to go and we are confident in it, then like, great, we'll do it. If we're not, then like, I would say, DAS or like, data scaling is sort of a soft question mark with Electra right now. And what that would likely resolve into is bumping up the 4 counts. Yeah, I mean, luckily that should just be a constant change. So that's something we can easily do, down the line. So takeaway is focus on PeerDAS, focus on everything. But actually, like, you know, to the extent that you have spare capacity, definitely keep eyes on PeerDAS. And yeah, otherwise, sounds like everyone will be heads down on these other EIPs. So that was pretty much everything I had in the agenda. Are there any other things we want to discuss while we're here?
Like, does any client team wants to test with just basic 2 EIPs that has been pretty close to finalized? I mean, the 6110 and 702. Or like
Teku
people
says,
just want to wait.
Yeah, Teku says that'd be good in the chat.
Oh yeah. So like you know, if people think like 2 weeks is too long to wait, then I can generate the test vectors just early next week. But I think it won't be a formal release yet. Just the test vectors. Is that okay?
Yeah, also from Lighthouse, yeah, tests are good. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a good path forward with the spec shell way. Like, we can work on that initial Electra PR that has 7110 and 7002. And yeah, then again, something I'll be working on next week is getting these other two in a place where we can merge them all. And then, yeah, again, my aim is by the end of the month to have, or even sooner, to have, yeah, this like DevNet 0 Electra spec with tests ready to go. Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, we can wrap up a little bit early today. Okay, seems like a no. Thanks for joining, everyone. And yeah, I'll see you around.
Thanks,
Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Okay,
Thanks,
bye.
guys.
Bye.